Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to High Top Sports Oregon. Yes, I know that you've missed us for a little bit. We've been we took a little bit of a hiatus, let some stuff kind of unfold. But we're back and we got our Oregon's Duck insider. Derek, how are you?
Good, man. I'm pretty stoked to be back. I know it's been long 3 weeks for myself in particular. I've been excited to jump behind the camera and get talking some Ducks content again. But yeah, lots happened in the last month, so I'm kind of excited to dig into it a little bit and get everybody the content they're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of my fault too. Obviously, you were on vacation. I probably should have shot a commitment video because we did get a commit in the last 3 weeks. Let's go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, matter of fact, we got two commitments in the last 2 weeks.
Two. Yep.
Um, yep, two of them both coming on the offensive line, so that's pretty exciting stuff. So we can start with Zier Addison. That's the one I think people are a little more familiar with in terms of the naming and just kind of where he's ranked. So he is a 6'4", 280-pound offensive tackle, rated 140 nationally by 24/7, which is a metric that we frequently use here. Um, he's someone who has kind of been a riser as of recently, garnered a little bit more of attention, received some major Power Four offers in the last couple months here. Particular Florida State, Georgia, Bama, Florida, Penn State, some programs that garnered some interest throughout his recruiting cycle. But he was in Eugene quite a few times and he ended up committing with the Ducks. So that's pretty massive for us there. Anytime you're kind of getting a commitment from somebody of that caliber, it's great. But we're talking 6'4", 280. So, we kind of got that raw size and then a wingspan of 6'10". So that's one I kind of I looked at and I had to re-look at it again. And he's just a very long, strong physical tackle. So he projects well at the next level. I do think he's got a little bit of growing to do. One thing, if you're kind of taking a look at his tape, it looks like he's very dominant in terms of run blocking, play after play after play. There's not many times you see him fault up a little bit in the run game. It's more in path pro where you see there are some things that could be cleaned up. And I'm assuming, that'll be a point of emphasis this fall in his senior year, before hopefully coming on to campus next year. But it's a pretty major commitment for Dan and the Ducks. I think it's a nice way to kind of kick the summer off in terms of some commitments that I know, a lot of people are waiting on. There's some pretty big names that Oregon's been flirting with over the past couple months. So, this is a nice little appetizer to what's to come. And then, in addition, this is not the only one. It's also worth mentioning Dimitri Manning, who is a 3-star recruit. What's he, 25 overall in terms of interior offensive lineman, not rated very highly. But you kind of look at his programs and kind of who's been talking to him and where he's been visiting and such. And, it's been some pretty substantial programs there. So you're kind of thinking, you're like, what's going on here with this guy? But then you really look at his size. You can't teach 6'7", 345. That is a massive individual, absolutely massive.
That's a mountain.
It's that's a mountain, and it's kind of like this prototype that we've been seeing Dan Lanning going after for the last 2 years now. When we're talking about a guy like Jaquan McCrory from the last class, absolutely massive mountain of an individual, and Dimitri Manning kind of fits that mold as well. So what I'm going to guess is this is more of um, a project in development. Like I said, you can't teach that size. You can teach the skill set. You can teach, all the X's and O's of the game, but you can't teach that size. So it's this is a pretty substantial commitment. I think this is one where we're going to see him rise up in the recruiting rankings as, we get these recruiting bumps periodically between now and early signing day. But he's a big guy, plays very physical. I think I've seen 3 different scouting reports that either had the word physical edgy or plays with a nastiness to it. So, that's a pretty commonality between what everybody's seeing with him there. So it's kind of nice to have someone who brings that edge and that demeanor to the offensive line. And, between him and Zier Addison, it's a nice little start to this 25 class. So I'm kind of excited to get the ball rolling there. I think there's some more work to be done in terms of, who they're targeting here on this offensive line. But like I said, it's a great start. And especially with the Dimitri Manning one, that's a very interesting one to me that I will be kind of curious to see, who continues to push for him throughout his recruitment cycle.
Yeah, so Addison had some big name programs: Florida, FSU, Miami. There was a couple others that were really, really in the hunt for him. Really wanted him bad. um, and took a late visit to Florida and FSU, and then decided to go ahead and go with Oregon. That's a big pickup. That guy is going to be, maybe not, his freshman year, but sophomore, junior, you could see him definitely playing on one of those outside tackle positions.
Oh yeah, 100%. And just kind of looking at how he's bounced around between visits and stuff. He was very very active with Florida State early on. It appeared that things went a little bit cold, and then Florida State kind of to pick up again a little bit more toward the end of when he announced his commitment. So that's kind of one where I was expecting a Florida State commitment almost. So I was kind of
I
surprised to see him announce Oregon, but
I think that he was the now don't quote me on this, but I think he was the young man to say I really like FSU, but I'm worried about the amount that they go in and get from the transfer portal. Um,
oh, I didn't even see a comment like that.
yeah,
That very well could be.
and that's kind of what shied him away, I believe. Because we were hot on the trail with Florida with him too, and we
Mhm.
heard that and was like, oh well, he might be a shoe in because we have two offensive line coaches. He really liked that. Um, but at the end of the day, he does go to Oregon. But I could have swore it was him that said, hey, I really like FSU. I like the family there. It feels like home, but I'm worried about the transfer portal. They really go in and they're extremely active in the transfer portal, and that can seem to bite you in the butt with these high school recruits.
And that's kind of one thing I was just going to say when you brought up that point. Like I said, I did not hear that comment and very well could have been to him. But it's just kind of interesting to me that this is now a thing that we're going to see popping up a little bit more. It's these successful programs, obviously like Oregon. We saw what Ohio State was able to do in the transfer portal. With the departure of Nick Saban, obviously Alabama was kind of forced to be a little more active in the portal than many people thought they were going to be. But it's just how they're approaching it. And then you look at a program like Colorado where, they are damn near living and dying in the transfer portal. So it's just interesting to me to introduce this dynamic to these high school recruits to where they're obviously paying attention to this because they know, there's no stability, there's no security in your scholarship position if you're at a program where there's constant turnover and you're bringing in from outside the program.
Yeah,
So yeah, I find that interesting, and it also interests me because over the last 2 years, Oregon has been extremely active in the transfer portal. Maybe not necessarily to the point of some of these other programs like
not FSU or Colorado
correct.
though.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking strictly, the sheer amount of commitments that come from the portal,
And I
but Oregon
believe
has been
that's what he was
quite
worried
active.
about. Yeah, I think I'm almost 1,000% sure it was him that said it. It was an offensive lineman that they were going after, and he was like, "Hey, I'm very worried about FSU and the amount of activity in the transfer portal because I feel like if these kids are thinking if I have a bad game or if I get in the doghouse, they're just gonna go in and grab a guy from the transfer portal and replace me."
Oh yeah, and it kind of makes or breaks for like a massive year too, if you really think about it. Because like a guy like Zier Addison, he's going to come into the program, and I don't think anyone in their right mind expects him to start as a true freshman. It's just based off of how we've address the transfer portal and kind of what the depth looks like currently and how much youth there is on this offensive line in terms of the second and third string. Like there's just a lot of competition that would need to be faced for him to get there. So what this whole thing kind of creates is if you're coming into that second year and you don't have that starting spot that year, you are a prime candidate to be replaced via the transfer portal. So I mean, it's not something I had ever really thought about, but now that I'm kind of thinking about it and speaking out loud, it sounds like I could see how that could be an issue for, especially some of these kids who are expecting to hear their name called on draft day, someday.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Let's go ahead and let's talk about what we got coming in. Um, big recruiting month coming down the pipe, right? And
Mm-hmm.
guys, let's say this: I run a recruiting channel. I run High Top Sports Recruiting. Guys, just calm down. The big whales are not they are not taken yet. Listen, when you have Wisconsin and Rutgers in the top 15, it's early. It is early. I had to tell this to Gator fans yesterday. I'm like, guys, it's so early, and these kids are. I talked to Shelton about this yesterday. I was like, these kids are kind of waiting later and later to commit.
Yeah,
They're wanting to
100%.
see what's going on the field and off the field, and if coaches are going to be there, if you're not going to be there, and obviously Dan Lanning's going to be at Oregon for a while, but these kids are just not committing early in the early summertime. I think your most of your commits are going to be 2 to 4 weeks before National Signing Day, and they're going to roll in. That's my personal opinion, but the commits are coming in later, which is like Florida's like 63rd right now in recruiting, right? Listen,
Sure.
we ain't recruiting 63rd, okay? It just is what it is. But some of these other programs that are just getting a bunch of 3-stars and stuff, yeah, they have 12, 13, 14, 15 commits, but they're 3-stars. The big whales are still there. So before we got into the recruiting talk, I just wanted to pump the brakes, Oregon fans. They're coming. They're coming.
Man, it's kind of crazy you bring that up too, because even though this class is sitting and it's just fine, you look at like the rankings and kind of where they are, like you said, prefaced, it is so early in terms of like when the big whales start to fall and those type of dominoes start to fall. We're not even going to consider some of these guys until, I'm talking like late October, November. There's going to be a handful of these like prime recruits who are not going to announce till signing day. Late signing day. It happens every single year. But at the same time, you have all these fans who are like, oh, they constantly hear these names associated with people. You know what I mean? So like the one I've heard, it's like the DeCorian Moore. It's so easy for fans they see Oregon and DeCorian Moore. They're like infatuated in love already, going to be heartbroken if he decides to go with Texas or LSU or whatever the case is. But they're like, well, why aren't we gaining any ground? And I'm like, you got to understand, this is the long game. This is not about trying to secure a commitment in July, because I mean,
USC. You look at
USC.
Classes falling apart. In a video I made for the recruiting channel, I really gave him kudos, and we talked about it. I said, hey, I think Dan Lanning not Dan Lanning. I think Lincoln Riley might be turning the page, and then it's like bang 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 bang, decommit. I'm like, okay, well, it was a false. When it rains, it pours.
When it rains, it pours. Exactly those recruits, if you remember, that was the craziest 2.5 weeks of just a constant trickle of commits to USC, who are all these blue chip, high caliber.
Florida, Texas,
Georgia, 100%. Ohio, yeah. It's like, so you're looking at it, and it's like this is kind of what I'm trying to say with like the DeCorian Moore thing. This is a perfect example of this. Is like, say he commits to Texas right now, right? He's a Texas kid, Duncanville, commits to Texas. The thought is Texas is leading his recruitment right now. All makes sense to me. Great program down there. I get it. But you will not find me one single solitary Texas fan who has been tuned into Texas football, or even just college football in general, who would look at you with a July commitment and say, I think he's safe. I think he's 100% going to sign. It doesn't work like that. You can get these commitments out for these big whales, but I hate to tell you, man, if you are that talented, you are going to have these programs constantly reaching out, constantly pushing to get you onto campus, to hopefully turn that unofficial into an official visit, hopefully turn that into multiple meetings and eventually a commitment. So it's like, it doesn't really matter. This is all about the long game.
Yeah, I think that the only positions that you can really secure a guy, it seems like a big whale early, is a quarterback. Because the quarterbacks really, I mean, now some do. Some flip-flop left and right. But the quarterbacks need to build the class. They want their guys around them, and they want to help recruit. So if you get like a Bryce Underwood from LSU, he's locked. He ain't going nowhere, okay? He's paid. He they already got him the playbook, okay? He's studying the playbook on the weekend. It is what it is. Those guys stay, but these wide receivers, these linebackers, these DBs, offensive linemen. There's only a very few very good offensive linemen every year that are 5-star and 4-star. They just don't get a lot of love. Defensive ends, those guys are getting showered with attention.
Oh yeah, by every program under the sun. And it's like those premium positions in particular, the two trenches, the offensive line, the defensive line, those are not positions where you typically see high school kids come in and are physically or skillfully ready to compete at the next level right away.
Yeah.
So then when you do get these guys, like I think about Jordan Seaton, for example, the end of his commitment was absolutely crazy. There was 5 different programs who was convinced he was coming their way, and he was visiting everybody and their mom under the sun. Like, when you garner that much attention at a premium position like that, like, no commitment is ever safe. And
And
I feel like that's kind of how a lot of these are going to be that Oregon is bringing onto campus right now.
yeah, and well, that's another thing is what was he too? A late commitment, down to the
Very late
wire,
commitment.
down to the
It,
wire.
Facts, because he was supposed to get his paperwork in on early signing day, and do you remember it didn't happen? So
Yeah.
then everybody was like, he's going to back out of this Colorado thing. Like, there were a number of programs who were hot on the. I think Florida was in on it on the very end.
Maryland.
Oregon was pushing. Maryland, yeah, Maryland was another one. Oregon was pushing very hard for him at the end, and obviously, you know, we know he ended up signing with Colorado, but it just kind of goes to show you that, like, until that pen hits the paper and the paperwork is in the hands of the right people, no commitment safe anyway.
Yeah, and even after that, we've seen NILs, you know, go away.
Oh yeah, released from there, and
Shot
yeah,
at.
exactly.
Yeah,
Uh,
but let's go ahead and get into this list. What does Oregon have coming down the pipe? I know a lot of names that you shot me. I know a lot of them just because they're the top ranked guys, and you got to get the whales on, you know, on deck and to Oregon for official visits. Let's go ahead and
sure.
get into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, seeing as how we haven't been on in a couple of weeks, we might as well just do the entire June recap of, you know, kind of some of the names that have been on campus. But I'll preface this by saying, you know, Oregon fans, if I were to tell you 5-10 years ago that during the recruiting process we were going to have 12 5-star visitors in one calendar month. And mind you, that's not even a full calendar month. That is just the 3-week period that is already concluded in June. There have been 12 5-stars that have stepped on the campus to Oregon. Now, am I saying they're going to land all of them? No. Am I saying they're going to land a majority? No. They might not even land more than 1 or 2 of them, but it's kind of the fact that you are constantly bringing in this talent and like this caliber of people are constantly interested in your program. It's a pretty exciting time to be a Duck. So just some of the names that I know, you know, the listeners are pretty familiar with: the Decorian Moore, who we mentioned, Trey McNutt, who has been surging toward Oregon as of recently, 5-star there.
Yep.
Pretty excited about that one. Jonah Williams, Michael Terry, DJ Pickett, Dallas Wilson, who is an Oregon commit, doing a great job holding on to that commitment, by the way. Hearing great things about him. Lincoln Kier, the top tight end in the class. Lamar Brown, who's a 26 guy. Jakeem Stewart, who's a 26 guy. Number 1 defensive lineman, but the thought is he's going to reclassify to the 25 class. So he was on campus. Naheem Offord, Noah McHale, and Dorian Brew. So it's just like the caliber that you are bringing in and are constantly in the mix with some of these names is crazy. And it's realistically, I think there's a chance Oregon can land about 3 to 4 of these if things would go absolutely perfectly. But
who's your 1, 2, 3, 4?
In terms of what?
In terms of your feeling of if you so you had 4 that you felt like you'd put money on. Like, yeah, they're coming to Oregon.
Oh, I don't know if I'd be confident enough to put money on 4, but if I had to do this, I think this is a kind of a fun one. I would go with Dallas Wilson. I think Oregon sits in a great spot. Been hearing a lot of good things, you know, kind of regarding how other programs are looking at his commitment to the program, and it sounds like so far he's solid. You know, being a 5-star receiver, as we were just talking about, this commitment is far, far, far from over. But they do sit in a good spot currently. So I would put him at 1. I think Trey McNutt would be the second one, the 5-star safety. He was flirting with Ohio State for a little bit. Now the thought is it's kind of an Oregon Texas A&M battle. So, you know, that one's pretty fluid, but he is the one who has been surging toward Oregon for about the last 4 weeks. Ended up getting on campus for an official visit. Sounds like things went great there. That's one where just kind of based off the trajectory of everything, I think that one's looking well. After that one, I would say maybe a guy like Michael Terry, 5-star. They have him listed as an athlete. As we know, he can play both sides of the ball. What it sounds like to me is Oregon is recruiting him to play running back. It's and like, you know, that's a whole nother topic for another day, just based off how they're handling running back recruiting in this cycle. But anyway, it sounds like Oregon's gained a lot of ground there. It's a Nebraska-Texas battle for him as well. But I do think they are surging in the right direction, and it sounds like he isn't solid enough on these other programs for anybody to consider him a lean anywhere. So I would say that's probably the next greatest chance.
I'm going to say this real fast. Texas just got another 4-star running back. If that's where he wants to play. So they have a 5-star and a 4-star running back right now, I believe, or 2 4-star running backs. So you think that with taking him, that it would bump you up in between the race if he is going to play running back.
See, and that's the thing. That's kind of the thing I was looking for. Is I was trying to find an interview where he talked about he wants to play in the next level, but being a good salesman of himself, he's like, oh, I'll play wherever I need to play. I can do everything. Which you're saying all the right things, but in terms of giving us a little insight as to what other programs might be trying to do, he wasn't giving us none of that. So who knows? Maybe Texas is trying to recruit him on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe they have other plans for him. I don't know, but that just that fact right there, that does bode well for Oregon in their cycle. But I'd be kind of more curious to see how Nebraska kind of navigates their cycle. It sounds like that's the one where they're starting to gain a little more traction than I feel comfortable with. But then again, it's Nebraska. It's I understand it. I get the hype. You got to start surging back in the right way eventually, but it's Nebraska. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. It's Nebraska.
So, and then what's coming up? What do we have coming down the pipe coming as far as next month? This coming month.
Yeah, so one thing to keep an eye out for, I believe it's happening in the next calendar week or so, but it would be Trajan Odom's commitment, who is a defensive lineman from the East Coast, someone we kind of touched on a couple months ago. He was ranked like 400 and something in the nation. And, this is one where we were actually on this channel, we were talking about why it was interesting that Oregon was pushing so hard for him. And I came on here, went back and watched it today, matter of fact. And I said, just wait, we're going to see that recruiting thing jump. And I kid you not, within that next month, he went from an 88 to an 89 to a 90 to a 90 and a half. And we are still rising. So it's, he's the one who's garnered a lot of interest from a lot of programs early on. Made a ton of sense as to why we saw his scholarships offers go through the roof, even though he was a lowly 3-star recruit. But anyway, he'll be, I believe it's next week. He's down to Oregon, little brother SC, UCLA, and Ohio State. So the thought is he does have a crystal ball to come to Oregon. Crystal balls have been pretty kind to us when they have been in our favor as of recent. So I feel pretty good about this one.
You get a Fong bomb yet, though?
We haven't got the Fong, but that's the one, man. That's the one. That's like the holy Bible. You see the Fong bomb come in for one of your players you really want, and you tell me you don't get through the roof excited. Yeah, you know it's coming.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen that one yet. So I'm hoping Fong, he looks out for us here. Drops it.
He's always the last one, though. He's pretty late.
It's because everybody knows his word is damn near gospel. You know what I mean? So these recruits, I guarantee they reach out and they're like, man, don't blow it. Please just wait until 5 minutes before, an hour before, the day before.
Yeah, for sure. And then recruiting wise, again, what else are we looking towards coming soon? Another guy that we might go to the Oregon way. Is there something in the next couple weeks that we need to be on the lookout for on Duck Watch?
Just kind of looking at my list here, the only other one that I think there is a chance that we could see him drop a commitment date at any day is 4-star tight end Deshaun Brame. He's the one we've been talking about for months here on this channel. Been flirting heavy with Oregon, been on campus numerous times. Surging in the right direction. As of recently, Tennessee and Oklahoma have kind of stepped up a little bit and made his recruitment a little tighter than I think most Oregon fans would feel like. From everything that I'm seeing from people on campus, it sounds like they're still pretty confident that he's going to follow through with his commitment and land with the Ducks. but that's definitely one to watch out for. And then kind of just right along that same line, not necessarily one that I'm thinking will commit to the Ducks because this is going to be another long-term thing, but five-star tight end Lincoln Cure, the number one tight end in this class. He's been heavily thought to be a Kansas State lock for quite some time now. He's the crown jewel of that class, made it very clearly that he is the focal point there. But he has been onto campus multiple times now, just completed his official visit to Oregon. And it sounds like, between Fong and some of the rivals guys and the 24/7 guy, it really sounds like things went really, really well and he will be back again. So it's just that's kind of one to watch out for to see how they navigate the commitment of Deshaun Brame, who will be committing before Lincoln Cure later in the year. But Oregon's sitting in pretty good position for the two of the top three tight ends in this year's class.
Gotcha. And then last little bit. Obviously, they're probably doing off-season workouts and stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about injury updates. Do we have any freak injuries or anything like that, or some guys still coming back that are you're starting to see clips of them making progress?
Yeah, in terms of the injury front, it's been cricket quiet. Absolutely nothing has come out, which I'm going to go ahead and assume is a good thing. Usually
Yeah,
when you're hearing stuff come out of camp, it's either, you're seeing those little snippet highlights or you're hearing the bad stuff that
yeah.
happens to leak out of camp. And I have not heard anything. The guys who were expecting to come back have all been returning per schedule. The only one that Oregon fans that kind of keep watching out for is Dalen Austin. That is the defensive back who, as we all know, got into a little bit of a legal mishap earlier in the year. So his court date got pushed back a little bit to later next month. The thought there is that he could be back with the team before fall ball starts. Now, obviously, there's a lot that needs to unfold both legally and, the kind of the internal process at Oregon there before that's something I can say with confidence. But it does sound like there is a belief that his charges will be dropped and he could be back with the team. He has been spotted on campus in the team weight room, so that's definitely a good thing. But that's one to keep an eye out. It's not something that's going to be resolved today, next week, next month. That's going to be something that comes right down to game time this fall.
Gotcha. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for us. And we will be on commitment watch for sure. If a commitment happens, we'll hop on and shoot a video. We're back in the saddle. Sorry for the 3 weeks of not being here for you, but obviously, we gotta take some vacations when we can. The boss man said, "Hey, great time in the next couple weeks. Take a vacation. Go ahead and get it out of your system, because after July 4th weekend, we're locked and loaded until football season. So, go ahead and like and subscribe to the videos. We are so close. We are humming. We're at almost 600. We got to get to the 1,000, and then we will be doing live call-in shows after every single Oregon game. Can't wait for that. That's going to be a riot. And as they start trickling little stuff, with the weight room and stuff like that, we'll make some shorts for it and get you guys some content. But I am Cody the Professor. And we got Derek the Duck, and we will see you later.